Patricia, welcome on today, which is Equal Pay Day. So you have been very outspoken. You shined the light on this issue at the Academy Awards during your speech. Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to do that, to use your platform for that.
Well, I was winning that award for playing this part of the single mom who struggled to raise her kids. She was the primary caretaker and the primary breadwinner. And I thought about how different her life would have been if she'd made her full dollar. I think sometimes people make subconscious choices to be in relationships where there seems to be stability, where they could have had that stability on their own and maybe wouldn't have ended up in negative relationships.
And was there ever a moment in your life, outside of this moment, where you thought, I really need to do something, to take action? And how did that feel?
Well, we were raised to be social activists, so we've been social activists our whole lives. I think you really get to meet the greatest people when you do work in social activism, and it really reinvigorates your spirit and your feeling of humanity and brotherhood. So I think the more that we can all participate in making the world we want, it feels better.
Yeah, definitely. And so who are some of your mentors or people in your life who inspired you?
Well, definitely my mom was the first social activist that I was exposed to. Billie Jean King, Lily Ledbetter, Mark Benioff, Jessica Neuwirth, Kamala Lopez, Angela Davis. I don't know her, but I wish I did.
She's amazing. Me too.
I know. I mean, there's a lot of people that I'm inspired by.
Yeah, and you, speaking of activism, you led a UN initiative for gender equality. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I'm one of their fair pay champions, and it was really exciting to meet with all these different leaders. So there were people that were representing unions with thousands of members, garment workers in India, people representing different governments all around the world, talking about best practices. Like Iceland, for instance, is really committed to eliminating the pay gap, and they're thinking with new policy they've just put into action that possibly they'll be able to close the gender wage gap by 2022, which will be exciting because they'll be the first nation on earth to have ever done that.
And so how can we be the next nation to do that? Or
I think we have to look at best practices, and where there's a will, there's a way. Unfortunately, this Trump administration has just rolled back a EEOC policy that was in place so that employers had to report gender and race audits on their salaries. And it's really unfortunate that that got rolled back. We actually need more progress forward, not to be rolling back in any area.
Of course. And I saw the documentary that you worked on last year, and in that documentary you talk a lot about how most women don't know that we're not even represented in the Constitution. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the movie's called Equal Means Equal, and my friend Kamala Lopez made it. And yeah, most people, for me, I grew up American girl thinking that I was represented in the Constitution, but the reality is when the Constitution was written in the 1700s, they never intended for it to cover women. Women at that time were the chattel or the property of their husbands and fathers. And you think, well, that doesn't matter today. Nobody looks at the Constitution like that. But there's certain Supreme Court justices that actually interpret the Constitution much closer to the time that it was written at. And Antonin Scalia said certainly the Constitution doesn't require discrimination on the basis of sex. The question is whether it prohibits it. It doesn't. So if you're going to have a Supreme Court justice that's looking at the Constitution and making legal decisions from that frame of mind, you're in big trouble. And we've seen it over and over again in the Supreme Court. So we have to make sure that women are actually now once and for all included.
And, you know, how do we all stay positive and continue this path forward, this fight forward for equality?
Well, I think there's so many great people. And I think working with like-minded people is inspiring and supports you. And no one person can do this alone. It's got to be many, many hands, and many hands make light work. So I think when we work together, and also it's a joyful thing to come together in community to try to make beautiful changes for the future. So yeah, I think there's a lot of great groups to be a part of. There's great AAUW offers some great courses that women can take for free on negotiating, because oftentimes young women and also men of color take lower salaries than they should initially at their first job, and then that carries through to their next job, and their next job, and every time they're getting paid less and less. So to take these workshops to learn how to negotiate properly, hopefully for your first job.
And what would you tell young women? What would your advice be as they're moving through their careers?
Believe in yourself and your value. Also mentor other women along the way, and other employees, discriminated classes, LGBTQ people, men of color. There's a lot of people that are being discriminated against in the workplace. But I think also believe in yourself and your value, and you have value.
I love that. And so last question, what does equality look like to you in the next 5 years, 10 years? When will we have truly reached equality? Or 100 years, hopefully not.
I can't stand it.
I know.
I believe, I'm impatient, I guess. I'm an Aries, so I really believe in fast progress. So I'm pushing for that, because I'd really like to see that happen in my lifetime. There was a time where I didn't think I would live to see gay marriage legal in America, and I have.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that I will live to see the day that there's actual fair compensation for all people who do their work, that they get paid fairly and aren't discriminated because of their gender or their race or both.
Well, I hope so too. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your time, and
Thank
you
you.
truly inspire all of us to use our platforms for change. So
Yay,
thank
thanks.
you.
Thanks.